provider security people are better, in inverted commas, than what you have. Or you could put it this way, they have more resources to expend on cloud security than maybe you have. All right. And they may have better infrastructure. Okay. And as long as their security is as high a priority for them as it is for you, then cloud computing has better security, according to Mr. John McDermott, with those letters after his name in 2009. Okay. However, there are problems. Sorry, you back?
Just the coursework. Sorry. So yes, I don't know what happened there. Just before we start, so see for the coursework,
Yes.
when you're talking about that, the first task we have to talk about like a cloud provider. We've got to talk about a couple. Then we need to talk about quality, maintainability, and reuse. Could you kind of talk about what you mean by that?
Yes, I have actually a set of PowerPoints on that. Somebody asked me that during the week, and I said I'm going to go over that in class. Probably do it next week, right? It's not scheduled until, I think, if you go to the notes there, it shows it in week 12, I think it is, right? But there's a PowerPoint about it if you want to start that section early.
Yeah, that's exactly what I want to do, because I like going through it, task 1 and then task 2.
Okay, that's all right. But I have a PowerPoint on it there. I think it's chapter 12, and it's called Ethical Professional and something else.
Perfect. Thank you very much.
Okay, no problem. But we'll do that. Maybe swap that around, do it next week. It'll make more sense, wouldn't it? All right. So loss of control, lack of trust, and multi-tenancy are all those issues in terms of cloud technology and the security issues around it. Okay. If you manage your own cloud, you will have similar security issues and maybe more, but or different ones than the ones listed above. Okay. But loss of control, somebody else has got your data. That's one of the main suspicions about cloud computing. Okay. Now we will have this going on, user account control access, the way in your ordinary laptop you have, in the cloud you have that as well. You will have security policies that you will negotiate on your service level agreement with the third party, the cloud provider. Okay. And you will be able to monitor what is going on in terms of resources and services that are being used. Okay, you probably won't know who else is using your cloud hardware. Okay, multi-tenancy is something that you won't be aware of. You know what's happening, and it's not fair for you to not allow it to happen, because that's how the cloud utilizes its resources for everybody else. But that's probably where your biggest area of suspicion will lie in terms of multi-tenancy. Sorry, that's better, isn't it? Okay. So your third party is taking the risk, but it's your data they're taking the risk on. So you have to, in your service level agreement, decide what the risks are, risk assessment. There's another PowerPoint coming up that covers that in more detail. Okay. And can you trust the third party, basically? Now, there's standards set by the ISO, etc. I've got that in another PowerPoint, which helps us measure the safety of a cloud provider. Okay. In the early days, that wasn't the case, but we have got lots of standards, procedures, compliance, certificates set up so you can check out how good your cloud provider is in terms of the standards. Okay. So, you want to choose a provider that's looking after your security. Now, today with cloud technology, that's not as big an issue as it was in the past, because security has become vastly superior sort of priority on the list for everybody. Okay. So I don't think there's even a problem anymore with worrying about security, because the cloud companies obviously are very much prioritizing security now. Okay. So multi-tenancy, as I mentioned, the cloud provider wants to maximize the use of all their hardware. That's what multi-tenancy is all about. They want as many different companies using the same piece of hardware as possible so they can maximize the resources. It's obviously good business. That's how they make their money. Okay. However, you will not know who else is sharing your hardware. So you're really trusting the cloud stack software to keep you isolated. Okay. And virtualization, there has been all sorts of suspicions over the years about virtualization two operating systems running on the one piece of hardware? Can they see each other? Can they cross talk and stuff like that? That's what hackers do. That's how hackers try to get into another system. Okay. And can you trust the cloud software to separate between the two tenants? Okay, so that's one of the major security issues is multi-tenancy. Okay. Loss of control, lack of trust, and multi-tenancy. That's sort of a summary. There's your virtual private connection. It's not necessarily a private system. You might feel as if you're using a private cloud on the public cloud. Now, if you pay enough, you can have a private cloud facility in the public cloud data center, but then that's an area of trust as well, isn't it? You're trusting Amazon that that hard drive is the only one that you use and nobody else uses it. Okay. Normally it's multi-tenancy. Okay. You can try to isolate between tenants using encryption, using that's what VPC does, right? You obviously consider the service level agreement in terms of its quality of service requirements, right? And the specification that they're running, the software that they're running, the security setup that they're running. But as I said earlier, if you're not very technical and you sell sofas for a living and you want to use cloud services, you trust the ISO standards and you go, right, I'm going to go for Amazon because it meets ISO 7001 or whatever. Okay. There's more of that coming up. So that's the first PowerPoint. I promised to be quick and I was. Okay, your next one is, if I can find it. This is not in any particular order, it's just the order I downloaded them in, right? These are security issues. They're not unique to the cloud, but they carry themselves over to the cloud, okay? Hold on, I forgot to message John Joe back there. All right, so confidentiality, integrity, I've got more of that coming up as well. You can get locked into one vendor, all right? That's one of the major problems. And then if they, aren't keeping your data secure, then your data's locked in. If they get expensive, your data's locked in, okay? That's one of the things that happens, all right? When you're moving from one tenant to the other, whenever a new tenant's coming in, say your business stops at 5 and your virtual machine closes down, okay? There's residual data in the memory and maybe even in the hard drive that has to be flushed before the next tenant comes along. So you're really trusting the cloud provider that they are cleaning up after your virtualization, right? Otherwise, data can be found in the next session. Why is this not working now? Oh, too far. If something breaks down, what data recovery mechanisms have they in place? Right. Last week we looked at the 3 zones or the 3 regions setup that Azure have. That's another thing you check out in the service level agreement. How is your data kept safe? How can you recover data if it's not working? Okay. Where your data is stored. Okay. The country it's stored in, the data center it's stored in, the security involved and the compliance in terms of local laws, etc. That's a big issue as well. Okay, you obviously want to store it somewhere where hackers weren't able to get at it if possible. Malware, it happens in any computing area, network, whatever, but it can happen in the cloud as well. The problem is if somebody else is running something on the virtual machine on the server that you're going to use later or even currently using, can that malware then spread through the hypervisor or whatever type of what's the word I'm looking for? Hypervisor is virtualization software, whatever sort of virtualization software the cloud's running, okay? Can the malware spread between the virtualizations? It is possible, okay? So not only is it your service is running, but somebody else's as well. It sort of widens out your attack surface, doesn't it? because other companies are using the same hardware you're using. Okay, cookie poisoning is very similar, right? Technically, they shouldn't transfer from one place to another, but with hacking, they could transfer some cookie poisoning from one virtual machine to the other. Okay, so these are typical attacks that can happen on a computer network, and the cloud is not immune from it. Backdoor and debug. Okay, and then a backdoor maybe into somebody's website, for example, and they're running a virtualization container on a server, and that allows the hacker to get onto the physical server in the cloud, and then you buzz up your container later on, and they're already at the kernel level on the server operating system that you're running your virtualization on. It's a possibility, all right? That's another method there, hidden field manipulation. Okay, it's just a way in which hackers can get a backdoor into the website. Guest hopping, okay, from one virtual machine to another. So all the things I mentioned above, if one virtual machine gets malware, etc., then there's a possibility, right, that the other virtual machine could become infected. That's the danger, okay? So you have to know that the cloud provider is aware of this and running software that mitigates against this, okay? Now, it's not to say that if you ran all of these services on your own local network, it wouldn't be open to this attack. It is, but because you're now running two virtual machines from two different companies beside each other in the same server, you maybe increase that risk, okay? SQL injection still exists, but it shouldn't be prevalent anymore if you've got good security in your database, okay? Somebody inside the cloud, in the company, the data center, let's call it, because that sounds weird, doesn't it? Somebody in the cloud, a representative or an employee or some other worker or cleaner even, right? Cleaning the floor on the data center, right, is an insider, and they may then be able to access your data. Okay, now of course there's policies in place to reduce that and mitigate against that, but it is a possibility, okay, that wouldn't be as prevalent if you kept your data at home. Okay, understand? Does that make sense?
Yep.
Yeah. I'm going to phone John Joe here to see if he's all right. There you are. Okay, a side channel attack's very similar. Okay, virtual machine, and then gets onto the physical machine, and then get back onto your virtual machine afterwards. Okay. All right. Where's my mouse? DNS attacks. Okay. Again, they happen whether you're on the cloud or not, but because you're on the cloud, DNS is more prominent, vital. Maybe is that the right word? Okay. Because that's how you communicate with the cloud, and that's how you communicate with services on the cloud. In fact, services, because of service-oriented architecture or distributed applications using API, right, which you'll learn about later, and distributed applications coming soon. Okay, because of that, we need DNS, we need URLs, we communicate with HTTP connections, right? That's how distributed applications work. So even not on the cloud, DNS attacks can happen, but because we're on the cloud now, DNS attacks are not more prevalent, that's the wrong word, are a bigger worry because DNS is heavily used for your cloud services, okay? So DNS or domain hijacking or cross-site scripting are very similar, okay? It's like, in a nutshell, replacing your URL with a false URL and redirecting you to the wrong place, okay? So if a hacker can get into your DNS server, then they can redirect you. You type in Danske Bank and it redirects you to a different IP address that has a landing page that looks like Danske Bank, and you enter in your passcode and now it can happen to your own computer as well. Some of the ways around it are to have a DNS server that somebody looks after, like Google. I use Google's DNS, right? You would like to think that BT or Virgin or any of those big ISPs use a secure DNS as well, but it doesn't always happen, right? Very often it's a smaller DNS that's being used, and it's not as secure as what you might think it would be. And if the hacker can get into the DNS server, then you type in a URL and it redirects. Okay, so that's really important. Since we're using cloud, we're using DNS a lot, so we have to make sure that our DNS is secure. Okay, cross-site scripting similar, right? It's like a URL issue as well. Okay, you can redirect a user to a different website through scripting in a website. All right, not unique to cloud, but cloud is not immune from it. That's what I'm trying to say for each of these. They're like generic attacks that will happen anyway, whether you're in the cloud or not. But just because you're in the cloud doesn't mean to say you're immune to these attacks. In fact, probably DNS a wee bit more susceptible, because that's what you're using to communicate between your services in the cloud. Moving on, IP spoofing is very similar. Okay, DNS spoofing or DNS, what we call it again? Attacks, hijacking, is redirecting you to a different IP address. Well, IP spoofing is pretending it's coming from a different IP address, and it's often used in DDoS attacks, or DOS attacks, I should say, or DDoS for dynamic DDoS attacks. Okay, if you can pretend that the ping or the packet or the bad packet is coming from a different IP address, then the original IP address doesn't get the blame, it doesn't get flagged. If you can pretend it's coming from an IP address inside the cloud itself, then it looks like it's a legitimate, communication. Okay, and I have told you the story before, but I'll tell it again now because it's relevant. A few years ago, teaching this class, I set up a server on the cloud using a company that gives you free cloud provision. It's not available anymore. They were doing it as a trick, actually, to create a customer list so they could sell themselves off to IONIS, I think it is. Ionis, I think, bought them over, right? And so Ionis bought them over with this big customer base. I was one of them, but I wasn't paying for anything. I got it free. So I made the best of it, but I set up a server on the cloud and it was working fine. I could remote into it. I could show students how it worked and how it was on the server and what size of memory it was, all the rest of it. It's quite handy. I knew it was a free trial. I used it for a while, and I didn't put a firewall on. I just assumed they would have a firewall on by default, but they didn't have. And my server started pinging all the other servers in the cloud service, and they emailed me and said, "Why are you DDoSing us?" And I said, "I'm not." "Why do you think it's me?" "Well, the hacker had IP spoofed and then set up a bot on my server and was able to DDoS from inside." So IP spoof is just pretending to be from a different IP address, and DDoS is what it's used for normally. Okay, so moving on. Man in the middle, or person in the middle, I should say. Okay, actually, you shouldn't say that. It's a device in the middle. It's not a person. You can't stick a lead in one ear and out the other. It's not your brain. It's actually a device in the middle. It should be renamed as. Okay, and this happens whether you're in the cloud or not. Okay, but because you're now dependent on your connection to the cloud, then all your data is flowing from your laptop at home or wherever you are to the cloud. So before that, it might have remained local, or at least in the building, but now it's going out onto the internet. Okay, so that's why it's probably more susceptible to a device in the middle. I'm going to rename that one, device in the middle. DIMA instead of MIMA. Yeah, it's better, isn't it? We do use SSL to protect from that. HTTPS, yes, or TLS, it's now known as. Do we need to go over that anymore? Any of this stuff you want me to go over in more detail, let me know, guys, right? I'm going to do this quickly. I don't want to bore you with all of it, but if there's something you're interested in or want to know more about, let me know. Stick it up in the chat.
It's interesting to hear what all these things mean.
Okay, you want to be more into the SSL stuff?
Yeah.
Okay, so way back, about 6 or 7 years ago, all websites were HTTP until you went to their shopping trolley, and then there were HTTPS, right? where you had to include a certificate, a digital certificate, right? It was provided by a certificate authority, like VeriSign or something like that. Okay, so all the big main countries who played into this, they had their own international VeriSign community, and there was private companies then that would provide you with a digital signature. So when you landed on that page, your browser would go, this is supposed to be a secure page. Let me check your certificate. And if the certificate was valid, then it would let you onto the page. Now, Google and Microsoft got their heads together, which is quite an unusual event, right? Let me see, I'll just show you an example here. Go to Google. Oh, I need to move my screen over. I'll do it in a second. Hold on. Right, let me move Google over here. Okay, so Google and Microsoft got their heads together and formed a committee. Let me see what I'll look up. Give me something to look up. Belfast Met. Belfast Met have a URL to it. Can't even type Belfast Met. Right, so Belfast Met. Here we go. So see the wee lock here? Yeah. Right. That's saying this page needs a certificate, and my Google browser went and said, "Do you have a certificate?" And Belfast Met's webpage said, "Yes, we do." And Google, my browser looked at it and went, yes, it looks valid, but let me check the private key, right? So the certificate includes a public key, right? Let's see if I can find it here. Thumbprint. It's not the thumbprint, it's part of the story, so this, but there's a public key. There's a public key there, right? So they send the public key off to Belfast Met's server and say, this is the public key we've been given. Is this correct? Belfast Met's server, sorry, the digital certificate, who supplied it? Cloudflare goes, yeah, let's check here. We've got their private key stored. They plug in the public key to the private key. It matches. Happy days, yes. Go ahead and display that page. It's authentic. So between me typing in Belfast Met and clicking on the link and Belfast Met's homepage opening up, that communication goes on between my browser and the certificate authority that issued the certificate. Okay, saying, is this a legitimate certificate? Now, there's a few more things goes on behind the scenes. As you can see, there's a wee bit more goes on there. It's not just as straightforward. There's one public key and a private key swap over, right? It's encrypted with 256 bits technology. There's the public key parameter. There's the public key itself in hexadecimal, right? Now, I suppose you could guess the public key, but if I send a guess off to Cloudflare and go, here, this is the public key that Belfast Met say is their certificate, Cloudflare goes, nah, it doesn't seem to work. Okay, so up on the screen pops saying, I'll try and find it here, hold on. Let me here to show you what I'm talking about. Drag it across. Here it is. So it'll say that there, okay? And you go, right, okay, I'm not going to buy anything from that store because it doesn't seem very secure, right? So 4 years ago, Microsoft and Google forced every website owner to put on a certificate on every page, right? So now if you don't have a certificate on your page, you're trying to load an HTTP page, right? Then it will say that, or let's see if I can remember where I know where there's some pages. Netiquette actually, if I can sign it to my Netiquette actually store their course on pages that are not secure, right? So if I log into my Netiquette account and show you a course, I can remember my email address, not my email address, my password. Looking good so far. And I'll show you an example. It's very hard to find examples nowadays of sites that don't use secure connections. Here's a site that I set up for you guys and I forgot about it. Interesting. And and it's going to get you to work your way through it. And I did start it one day with you. Remember that? Cloud development and security, which is quite apt because that's what we're talking about today. But I forgot all about it. So give you this to do, shouldn't I? Maybe if you get your assignment done, we could do this. It's a whole course on Welcome to Cloud Security, 101 is going to say, 1.0. And you have to go through, work your way through it. But what I'm trying to do is get to a page where it shows you information and the block's not there. Maybe typically this site would have it secure, wouldn't it? Let me try a different one. Remind me about that, guys, because I set that up for you to do cloud development, and then I spent every week talking too much and forgot about it again. It's called Cloud Development Security, right?
I think we have an email.
Yes, you do. I set it all up for you, and one day I told you to go and start it, and then I forgot all about it, to be honest. Let me try this one. I don't even know what this one is. I'm supposed to be learning all this stuff as well, you see. Somewhere it says launch course. Course home, is that there? This is course home. Course introduction. What was that? Typically, maybe fix this to have, because I found on here. Right, where else would we do it now? Let me see. I'm trying to find a place with no lock symbol to show you what it looks like. Some of the AWS stuff as well. Oh, I don't know. It might come back to me, guys. Sorry, I can't think off the top of my head where to find one without the lock. But if you knew a certificate there, right, there'd be no lock. Maybe they fixed this. It used to be all their course material didn't have any locks on it. Maybe if I go to some of the changed the layout of it all. Maybe that's why they changed the layout. They've made it all secure. Maybe. Right, back to the Google one. So if I click on that and go to connection secure and certificates file, you see there's a lot of information there about the certificate, right? So that's how SSL works. Now, SSL is about a long time since it has. The early SSL version, hackers worked their way around it quite early on. That's why certificates look so complicated now. You've got all these keys backwards and forwards, right? It's quite a complex whole process. SSL version 2 was made to make it better, and they introduced things like higher bit depth security. This one's not great, like it's only 256. Some of them use 1024. Some of them use variable bit depth technology as well. Okay. But anyway, SSL version 2 became hackable about 6 years ago. So they brought this new thing out called, how do you spell Danske Bank? Oh, there's it there. A TLS, right? Transport Layer Security. Okay to all. Hope you don't have any dodgy cookies, guys. Right?
Not my department anyway.
Okay. Let's see what security the bank uses. Oh, still 256. Oh, fair enough. They do say that the bank's security levels. Oh, the public key is bigger. Yeah, it's 2048 bits, which is better, isn't it? Belfast Met was only 256. But that you'd expect that Belfast Met's just going, we need a certificate, let's get a cheap one. That's typical Belfast Met. This is being recorded, is it? Oops. But Danske Bank being a bank, of course, they want to have better security. So look at their thumbprint. But that's actually not the thumbprint. The thumbprint's down here. Right, but look at their public key in terms of Belfast Met's public key. Do you see the difference? Right. So as soon as I clicked on Danske Bank there, that hyperlink, my browser, because my browser's up to date, because I keep my Windows updated, always do that, of course, for security purposes. But actually, Windows 11 is wanting to unload on my system and haven't allowed it to yet. I'm not really wanting that just yet. But my browser goes and contacts global sign, right, and says to global sign, excuse me, we have a request here for a web page. It says it's Danske Bank. I'm going to send you the public key. I've got it right here. I've just sent you a copy of it. Right? Can you check that public key against your private key for Danske Bank and let me know if it is actually the genuine Danske Bank homepage. And the global sign go, yeah, sure, no problem. Back to you shortly. And they've said yes, and the page loads. Actually, what blows my mind is how quickly that actually happens. I think that's really amazing, isn't it? That whole process happens as you click the link. It's pretty amazing, isn't it? Now,
Question.
yes.
Is a hacker not able to then create their own certificate as such?
Yes.
And then have it that the web page looks like it's got a certificate, but it doesn't?
Yes. They do, and they can. And what happens there is the hacker makes up this public key, right? That is, you just copy that public key there. I could actually do it, right? And say there's a public key. Is this Danske Bank? Okay. And the global sign would go, it looks like Danske Bank. It is their public key. However, we've also tested the digital certificate with some of these. Now I'm not sure how it works, and that's probably why I don't know how it works, because if the hackers knew how it worked, it would mean they could hack into it, right? But there's also some sort of a system here, another code that's used. Let's double check with a token. Do you know the way tokens work, like multi-factor authentication, right? So there's an algorithm set up in global sign on somehow in this certificate, right, that is unique to the time or some other setting. So it double checks that the public key is actually coming from the digital certificate. So it's more than just a public key. Does that make sense? Right?
Yeah.
Now, how it works exactly, I don't know. Right? I usually stop at that point because it's complicated enough. And it's amazing how fast it happens. Right? Now, it will expire. The certificate will expire. There's an expiry date on it. There's there. Okay. And you have to keep renewing it, because the idea there is that if hackers do work out how to fool this certificate, that at least it'll expire and you have to get a new one. So they've only got a year to work out how to emulate it, right? There have been 2 known cases of digital certificates being excuse me, being created that are not proper ones, fraudulently. And then whenever they're found out about it, they're put on a list called a revocation list. Sorry, I'm having a drink, I'm talking too much. So you get a revocation list, right, of dodgy certificates. Either they have been out of date, or possibly somebody's hacked them, or they've been created by hackers and they're not genuine. And so my browser will actually fill up with, or uses the DNS server or something, a list of revoked digital certificates. Okay. Certainly global sign will have a list. So whenever my browser goes, is this certificate valid? It's something to do with the key serial number, maybe first is the first question. Yes, it's valid. Can you send me the public key? Does it match the private key? Yes, it looks like this is Danske Bank. Off you go. Okay. It's a very good system. It works really, really well. And Edge and Chrome and Firefox have forced it on us now. Every website has to have every page with a certificate, not just the payment page. Okay. It also means that your data you type in, right, whenever you start typing in to Danske Bank's page, oh, sorry, right, when I submit that to that, that didn't really work, sure, that is not seen by the hacker. They see something encrypted, not those words. That's the advantage of using certificates. Okay, so that's what SSL is. So good question. Yep, happy to share a little bit of knowledge on it. Do a bit more digging on it. It's interesting stuff. Professor Messer has a good video on it, so he has. Check him out on YouTube. He's got his own channel. Okay, not the sort of thing you know gets many hits from the teenagers, but it's actually very good. Professor Messer explains things really well. Network sniffing is really the same as a device in the middle attack, so it is. Okay, and it only really works for unencrypted data. Once you start using certificates, HTTPS, your data is encrypted, and really the hacker can't see anything. Okay, so it's a very, very good security system. It's not perfect, but it's like almost there's a very slim chance of the hacker getting any data from a web bit of web traffic that's got the SSL. It's not called SSL anymore. I know that's just a nickname for it because that's the name originally it was called. It's actually TLS. All right. So with TLS being used on our traffic, and remember with distributed applications, HTTP is the normal sort of mode of communication between our applications, right? Then it makes it secure so much better. And finally, for this PowerPoint, it's just the fact that with your cloud, you need to be able to log on, prove your authenticity, be authorized. This non-repudiation thing is about if you do it and you're signed in, it's your fault. We mentioned it before. And then availability of your data. I have 2 more PowerPoints to go through. All right. I'll have to be fast here because I'm going to bore you to tears. But they're not too long. Well, 25 slides. Okay, so that's just the need for security. And if you are the security administrator, you have to implement an information security management system. All right. Okay. Which responds, this is a wee bit more cyber than it is cloud, but this is the only week I'm doing security. Okay, so bear with me. Okay. A risk management, actually they use this PowerPoint with the cyber guys, so it's not specifically cloud, but it is useful for you guys as well. CIA, the triad, confidentiality, integrity, and availability is how we need to think about our data. Keep it confidential, keep data integrity. You can't prove your data integrity if somebody's been on your system, and you have to keep your data available, otherwise it's no use to your business. Okay. All to do with management and your policies and procedures and your organization and guidelines, who's allowed to log in, what devices you're allowed to have, are you allowed to use flash drives, are you allowed to take a lunch break and leave your computer on, or should you switch it off or log out? Can you use Chrome during the day on your computer, stuff like that, all that sort of stuff. Okay. Technical issues like the hardware, the software you're using, up-to-dateness of the devices, etc. And then your actual people and managing your people and doing security checks and job shadowing and job pairing and all those sorts of policies that are more HR rather than security. This is an old adage, right? That your data was kept secure in defense, in depth, in layers. Okay, it's a little out of date, but it still is a good illustration of how we try to keep our data secure. All right, and it's not accurate in any way, but it gives you ideas of the different types of things that are trying to protect our data. The application itself, the host machine and its operating system, the network and the firewalls and the network administration and the IPSs and all that sort of stuff. If you don't know what they are, check them out. The physical locks on the doors, the gates on the windows, or bars on the windows, sorry, the gates outside, the CCTV system, and then just, what you are allowed to do and what you're not allowed to do, policies and procedures, and safety, and don't take the laptop home with you, don't plug in a flash drive, don't use anybody else's flash drive, don't use a DVD, don't send any data to this site, or don't click on an email, all that sort of stuff. Well, that's a bit extreme, isn't it? You have to click on your emails to see them. So if you want to manage the risk of your data, and this just applies to anything in general, not just the cloud, okay, you have to work out what the risks are. You have to work out what the vulnerabilities are, categorize your risk and the assets that you're trying to protect. Is the data worth it? What sort of data are you trying to protect? It's like your hardware and your software and your information, okay? And monitor it and somehow address the risk, okay? The assets can be physical or logical. You could have devices that could be stolen, you could have devices that could be broken, but your data is probably your most prominent asset on the cloud, okay? In fact, that's one of the advantages of the cloud. You reduce your asset value by using somebody else's hardware, okay? Who owns it? Who owns the data? Who's the custodian of your data? That is ironed out in your service level agreement, okay? And then you have to work out what data is sensitive, what data is critical, what data is important, what data is negligible, what data do you have to be careful of in terms of the law or compliance, okay? what threats there are. It could be anything. It could be a hacker. It could be an insider. It could be just carelessness. It could be old equipment. It could be a fire. Okay. And then what vulnerabilities are there? And usually the vulnerabilities in and around the cloud are the software and the up-to-dateness of the software and the hardware. Okay. It's not usually the physical. Data centers are very secure places in terms of, fences and security guards and doors and locks and biometrics. Okay. So vulnerabilities tend not to be physical in the cloud. And when you do assess your risk, you have to come up with some sort of a risk impact type scenario. Okay, how likely is the risk to happen, and what's the impact going to be, right? So if my data was stored in a data center in Ireland, the risk of an earthquake is very low. Okay, and if my data was all research on the weather conditions that have happened over the last 300 years, I say that because I stumbled upon an interesting website that has all the weather data from the 1700s right up to from the Armagh Planetarium. The problem is it's formatted as a text format, HTML. I'm going to have to take it and make it into a spreadsheet and draw some graphs, just out of curiosity. But anyway, sorry, I'm drifting off topic a lot there. So if that's the sort of data you had, low impact, the likelihood of an earthquake and research data on weather patterns, low impact. However, if it's a data center in California and your information or data is everybody's payment details or everybody's bank details who works for you, high and high. Do you see how you'd measure that? Okay, and you have to draw up a chart for every type of asset, mostly your data in the cloud. Okay, what do you do then? You can avoid it. Let's not use this data. That's very difficult to do. You can mitigate it by passing it on to somebody else. That's what the cloud is for. Giving Microsoft the responsibility of holding that data. Transfer the risk, okay, to a third party, or accept that the risk is there and just work with it. And there's a little bit of each of those things goes on in any company, in any cloud environment, okay? You monitor it. There's the standards coming in that I mentioned earlier, the ISO standards. There's other ones that start off with 7,000 for a security and cloud. You're not required to know all of them, but some of you may be interested in searching up on those ones. If you own a shop, we talked about this one earlier. If you own a shop, there's your payment card, data security standards you have to measure up to. That's a very popular one for everybody in retail. Every year they have to check their systems, check their payment system, check their internet connection, check their computers that are on their internet connection, run software to check that there's no viruses, etc. Otherwise, you can't take card payments. Trust in the cloud. There's a Cloud Security Alliance that provides, some sort of a register of which cloud providers can be trusted. It's a wee bit like the numbers on your door for the restaurant when you go to eat your food. Yeah. What's number given, so somebody comes around and checks how clean the kitchen is, so you don't have to go and before I order my fish and chips, can I have a wee walk around the back of your kitchen and see how clean and tidy it is? Yeah, somebody else has done that for you. So this is the same idea. Somebody who's professional, hopefully, has checked the cloud security and given it a star rating. Does that make sense? Obviously, they're going to have firewalls. Well, not that the one I set up had a firewall. They should have done, but they didn't. Which includes virtual firewalls and virtual private networks, which include virtualization of networks and resources and systems. That's how cloud works. Okay, we've talked about VPC and VPN earlier, right? This is what you've done in the conventional times. When you're communicating on the internet, you'd have your firewall to protect you from the internet. When you have cloud, it's basically inside your cloud, you have a firewall. You've got actually several firewalls and load balancers, but we looked at the structure of a cloud one other day, didn't we? Okay. Other risks, APIs, we mentioned them. APIs are heavily used nowadays to communicate between applications, and we have to keep them secure. Best way to do that is use HTTPS, because APIs operate on the hypertext transfer protocol. So putting the TLS in there is the best way to protect your APIs, okay? And that's why it says encryption of data in transit. That's what that is. HTTPS is encryption of data in transit, okay? We always have encrypted our data storing, right? We're very good at that for years now, but HTTPS encrypts our data in transit. Anybody falling asleep yet? Everybody?
Yes.
Aye, very much. It's okay,
Oh,
Geoff.
Will you
It's all
survive
good.
to the end of this one and not another short
Well, a
one?
lot of this is relevant to my job with working with websites and different servers and stuff, so I find it quite interesting.
Good, good. So if one interested person. That's not bad. It's better than most afternoons. Multi-tenancy, we've mentioned already, yeah? You're happy enough with that is? And then the mitigation of that is use your own private network, really, or use your own private cloud. You know, incident management is what the boring security administrator has to do. As soon as something happens, they have to have incident management plans in place. Boring, yes, but very, very necessary. Insider and criminal threats. I think I'll just skip through these to show you that they're there because we've mentioned them already. Okay, lose your data, expose your data, data gets damaged or deleted or something, right? It's in the wrong jurisdiction and you're breaking the GDPR rules. Okay, and your service level agreement doesn't specify who's responsible for what. Listen, we're better at that now, okay? Your modern cloud provider, this has been sorted out in the courts over the last 10 years, and now everybody's pretty much knows who's responsible for what in terms of your cloud service. Read the small print, but we're a lot better at that than we used to be back when this was written, okay? But as part of your plan, if you're one of the people who has to be involved in keeping policies in place and service level agreements up to date, you need a plan, you need to check, and you need to act. That's just a little acronym to help you remember that there is a life cycle for these things because cloud technology keeps changing. And so your service level agreement needs to keep changing, and your policies in your business, HR policies, computer use policies, software policies, all of that has to keep changing because the technology changes. Okay. There's more notes at the bottom of these slides as well if you want to dig a bit deeper. Okay. And then this is more to do with if you are a security administrator. Once an incident happens, you have to respond and you have a team already set up. You have to have the plan in place for an incident before it happens. Otherwise, you'll just flounder along and not get it sorted, right? And one of the things this slide doesn't mention, because it's American, is that you have to inform the ICO immediately, all right, of an information breach, okay? If somebody hacks into your system locally, you're pretty much your own boss in terms of forensically examining the scene and getting all the data from the hard drives, etc., to track that person down. However, if it happens in the cloud, you don't really have the same power or responsibility or access to be able to track that person down. And another person could be using a virtual machine over the same hard drive area, RAM chip, whatever, almost straight away after the incident happened. So it's really, really important that if an incident happens, you report it to your cloud provider instantly so they can lock down that server and be able to forensically examine it. However, they may discover it even before you do because of what the very first slide said, that they're maybe more invested in the security than you are. Okay, so it's not all bad news. And there's actually a whole topic I teach some of the guys in cyber digital forensics. It's really interesting, and how it's like a CSI investigator investigates a crime scene. We're actually training some of the PSNI guys in their new forensics center in just off the Lisbon Road. I shouldn't tell you where it is. Whoops. You're not supposed to know where it is. We're training them up in digital forensics. It's really interesting, actually, how to track down the scene of the crime electronically. Quite an amazing topic. I was very interested in that one. So I was.
Is there any way to sneak into one of those lessons or courses?
Yeah, leave that with me. I could maybe get you onto that. All right. It's an AutoCAD course, so yeah, it's actually quite good. So this I can definitely get the resources for it. No problem. Yeah, I'll get you that. I've got
Please.
access to them. Yeah, no bother. I'll pass it over to you later on. And a visit to that centre would be great. They set it up. It's one of the first ones in the UK. where they have the Faraday cage, they have all the equipment there to examine phones and laptops and tablets and every electronic device you can think of to try and track down the criminals and their activities electronically, following the electronic footprint of a crime and stuff like that. Very, very interesting stuff. Right, one more PowerPoint, if that's okay. And then I promise to shut up and let you get your assignment done. And this one's not too big, I don't think. 6 slides, look at that. So anybody could survive that, couldn't they? Right? And some of this is overlap, so you don't have to worry. So virtualization is one of the issues. It's a necessary technology. It's a technology enabler for the cloud. Remember that? Technology enablers. Virtualization is one of the big ones, right? But as we talked about earlier, it causes a bit of an issue because you could cross-penetrate between virtual machines on the same server, right? And that's not going to happen in-house because all you guys will be using it on your own server. So it's never going to happen in-house, but it can happen on the cloud, right? So virtualization, cloud virtualization security wasn't really a big issue until recently. Now it is. It's something we're thinking about even more. Right, so cloud providers are consolidating. They're consolidating resources. They've got many tenants. That's the problem. That's how they make their money, right? But they're going to win because they're making their money. There may be losers because of, cross-contamination of malware, etc., on the virtual machines, right? That's the big fight at the minute to keep that a low risk. Okay, so it's cost effective, but maybe not the most secure. I don't know. Maybe I shouldn't leave that line in there. Do you know what I mean? Because it's not really, okay, I did that. Enable editing, sorry. Not necessarily the most secure. Okay, let's leave it there for now because we could argue that that's why like the health service, for example, and the PSNI don't use cloud because they reckon it's not necessarily the most secure. Okay, fair enough. Some cloud providers might not survive. We mentioned vendor lock-in. What happens if your cloud provider goes under or goes bust? Where are you then? What happens to your data then? Okay. These are questions. These are not really answers. This PowerPoint is questions to hang your thoughts on. Right? International issues, cross-border. You are in the UK, whether you like it or not. That's just technically you are. Some of you might not want to be. Some of you are glad you are. I don't know. Let's not get that debate started. But we were in Europe a few years ago. We're not in Europe anymore. Whether you like it or not, that's just the way it is. So there's different legal requirements there. It's caused a lot of havoc, so it is for some companies. Maybe your company has caused a lot of hassle with. Maybe your company has to move things around because of that. I know that some UK firms opened up offices in Dundalk, right? So they could have a European presence. GDPR, it was a big scary thing 2 or 3 years ago. Boris has watered it down a lot and hasn't made a big deal out of it. He has a trick up his sleeve. I can see it coming. The Computer Misuse Act, no, the Data Protection Act 2018 seems to be his version of the GDPR, right? Check that out. It's a new thing floating about the web. And he probably will stamp down hard on it. But then this COVID thing arrived and sort of everybody forgot about GDPR. And now COP26 has arrived and everybody's forgot about COVID. So who knows if we ever get back to GDPR at all. Anyway, there's always something to talk about. Agreements. Who enforces the service level agreement? That's a big legal minefield. So it is, especially if your data is international. Should some data stay to the cloud? That's a question. I'm not answering that one. Cross-tenant hacking is multi-tenancy, which I've been talking about. Is that a problem? What do you think? We should actually go off and make you do research and all this, but I'm not going to be that cruel. Okay. Your virtual environments are on physical servers. Somebody else is using that physical server at the same time as you're using it. Okay. How are the paths between them managed? Who's looking after that? How much transparency is there? That's back to the star rating, isn't it? So somebody from environmental health has been out looking at their kitchen to make sure it's clean. Right, that's what happens. So somebody from ISO, from that other one that I can't remember the abbreviation of now in America, NIST, I think it is, has been out to their data center, has checked their software, has made sure that they are managing the paths between their servers, right? And the servers and the libraries and their hard drives and their storage areas. Okay, somebody with the knowledge has given them a star rating or actually an ISO standard certificate. And that's how you know you can go and eat at their restaurant. I'm crossing my metaphors out there just to make it more interesting, but anyway. Okay. Similar to what we had in one of the previous PowerPoints, okay? A fast flux, that's your IP spoofing, where a hacker can use lots and lots of different IP addresses and keep fluctuating between them to try and fool your software into thinking that it's not just one IP address that's doing the attack, it's coming from different IP addresses. So it's similar to IP spoofing, right? Who owns the data, where's it located, what country is it located in, what laws are we breaking or not, and then commingle data on the same hard drive is my personal data and yours potentially, right? My cloud could be sitting right beside your cloud on the same hard drive. Okay, we're trusting the cloud provider that they don't allow that data to be cross-contaminated. Okay, there's a wee bit more underneath there if you want to read up on that. But listen, I've given you more than enough to answer the questions on the exam on this, and I'm going to give you a revision list before the exam happens as well. I might be done the revision list already, have I? So then the other day, somebody's asked me for one, and I think I put it up in the chat. Check that out. I think I have a revision list in for machine learning and cloud development. Somebody asked me for one. I said I'll try and get it done sooner rather than later, and I think I put both of them up there. Double check that. Will the data be encrypted? Yes. When at rest? Yes. In motion? Yes. Both, but that's the same answer, isn't it? Encryption adds overhead. Now, what does that mean? It costs more and it reduces bandwidth, right? Now, we're looking earlier at Belfast Met's certificate, 256-bit. Lightweight, but okay, 256 is fine. There's nothing wrong with it, especially for like Belfast Met, where it's not personal data and stuff like that. Okay. A 12048 was Danske Bank. Considerably more bandwidth needed, right? And in fact, it does happen. I've checked this out. At busier times of the day, banks will drop their certificate level down to half of that to reduce bandwidth because it does take up considerable resources or overhead. Okay. Who manages the keys? GlobalSign, VeriSign, certificate authorities. We trust them with our key management, right? The hypervisor, I've mentioned this already. The hypervisor is controlling the virtual machines, but if a hacker can get into the virtual machine and into my hypervisor because I haven't updated it or there's a vulnerability in it, then they could cross-contaminate all the virtual machines running. So if somebody got into one virtual machine running on AWS's server, there's nothing to stop them infiltrating. Well, there is hypervisor. I'm not going to scare you. The hypervisor does a very good job, actually. Now, when you delete your OneDrive folder, is it really deleted? Right? If you delete a file off your hard drive and then you're involved in some criminal activity, which hypothetically speaking, of course you're not, and the PSNI cyber guys come along and take your hard drive into that place I was talking about earlier, that's another way you can get to visit that place. You don't want to do that way. Then they will find that file on your hard drive. Okay, even if you've pressed delete. Right now, if you've taken that file and pressed delete, they will find it for sure, easily. I've done it myself before now. I've found photographs that I've deleted off a hard drive accidentally. Right, so the software that you can use to refine that file and rebuild the file. You can get software that deletes and deletes and deletes and deletes and deletes and deletes and deletes, right? But the police still reckon that they can still find most of the data and recover it. That course I was talking about earlier, Jordan, there's a lab in it where you can actually recover deleted files, right, and go through that whole process. It's very interesting. So the only real way to delete it is to destroy the hard drive. Right? Now, if you did it often enough and reformat the hard drive a few times, it basically just deleted it. For anybody else, any normal person could never find it, right? But if you have personal data that has expired or a customer that is no longer working for you, or sorry, buying stuff off you, and they ask for their data to be deleted, does the cloud go to that effort? No, they probably don't. It's lying on the hard drive somewhere. Okay, so there's that issue about is it really deleted? You have to destroy the hard drive. Well, I was teaching this to another class, and one guy told me about however he works, and I'm not mentioning the name of the firm because they're not supposed to do this. Have a big machine that shreds metal into landfill, and occasionally people come along with hard drives and they put it into the washing machine and they shred the whole lot. And that gets rid of the data for sure, right? But actually, you're not supposed to do that. Anyway, I hope that's not being recorded. It is. Oh no. So perform platform virtualization, multiple copies of software running on the same operating system. Maybe 20 of them running at the same time on the same server, okay? Each piece of software is behaving as if it's the only one that's using the hardware. That's how virtualization works. So you don't even know that the other one's running. You don't know who's running it. You don't know what company it works for. It could be the hacker themselves, right? They kind of the same MAC address. That's not as common as it used to be, okay? You could remove the whole environment, and they reckon that virtualization improves security is a myth. However, there are elements of virtualization that do improve security, like virtual networks, etc., or VLANs and stuff. So that's quite a debatable topic. Nice little sort of debatable line to leave you with, and that's me done. Right? I think you need a coffee break after that, don't you? And get your assignment finished or started, maybe for some of you, right? Please don't leave your assignment too late. You got it early, and you've another month to finish it. But please don't leave it to the end because it's a wee bit tricky. It looks easy when you see somebody else's or see some of the examples, right? But getting your data connections to work is a wee bit tricky. So please don't leave it too late. All right. Remember, it's Belfast Entertainment. It's an app, preferably the phone version of it, or you can do the tablet version if you want. I don't mind, right? And it's connecting data from different sources. So I want your input data to be in one cloud and your output data to be in another cloud. Is that okay? Does that make sense? Right. So it could be like a customer selecting an event, booking a ticket, and then the fact that they've booked a ticket goes and gets stored on a spreadsheet or a database or CSV file on Google Drive or OneDrive or SharePoint. Okay. But the data for the events that was listed came from a different source, like OneDrive or whatever, okay? So try to create a variety of cloud platforms. You can use Microsoft for all of it if you want, because OneDrive and SharePoint and Power Apps are all three different sort of cloud locations. I will say they are anyway for the purpose of the assignment, all right? Or it could be a list of artists that you are in contact with as an event organizer, and you want to, bring up the list of artists, and then you select them and book them for a certain venue and a certain date. Any combination of that you want to do as a customer, as an admin, any of them, that means there's going to be a variety of different apps being created. Yes? Okay, so it could be a locations app that finds a suitable location for a venue. So a band contacts you and says, we want to organize an event. We expect to have 5,000 people there. Can you organize it for us? And you go through the logistics with them and ask them questions, and they fill in a form, and that becomes your app. Any of those approaches, okay? Any angle you want to. Does that make sense? Could I just have a quick survey? Have you all started that, have you? Or not?
I have, yeah.
Already started, yeah.
Good.
Nearly finished, you just need to finish writing it up.
Excellent, excellent.
I unfortunately haven't started it yet. I've just been busy with work, but I'm hopeful get it done this weekend. Started this weekend.
Okay, just try and start it early because you can run into technical difficulties and you want to leave room for that. Is that all right?
Yeah,
That's
appreciate
okay.
it. Thank you.
No bother at all. You don't have to have it started, but just don't leave it too late.
No, definitely.
Connecting to the output source can be quite frustrating. Input
Yes.
isn't so bad, but the output is a
It
hair
can
loss
be. Yeah.
solution.
Yeah, it can be tricky. I think, Matthew, I would right in saying that output to SharePoint seems to be the easiest. Would that be right?
Yeah.
Although previously I got quite a few guys sorted out with output to Google Drive. It worked as well. But here, you need to share, if you want to test it, share the app with me, share the source file with me, and share the output file with me as well. And you have to give me edit rights to the output file. Okay? You can give me edit rights at all if you want. I won't mess it up, I promise. I'll try not to. But you do have to give me edit rights to the output file, otherwise when I'm signed into the app, my sign-in won't actually edit the output file. Does that make sense? Okay, and video it as well, of course. And the expiry thing, is any trial expired on them? Or maybe it's not for the AI, isn't it? That's the AI part, sorry. No. Nobody's trial version of this part, so they're not. You've all got full access, haven't you? Right.
Yeah.
Okay. Right, go get a coffee break. Wee bit of refreshment after that heavy duty security. That's all it is in security. Be glad to know. And then work on the rest this afternoon on the power up. Okay. If you run into difficulties, give me a shout. If you check back through the chats, I've got loads of different links to what do you call it? Tutorials on it. Okay, which are very useful. And if you find any other good ones yourself, drop them into the chat for the rest. Is that okay? And use your time wisely. We've now up to 14 people. That's everybody now, isn't it? Just stay on the call for a while, will you? So that I can just actually don't bother. I'll do it now. Hold on. Just want to have you all here. See who's here and who's not. To see if my list. I'm more checking to see if my list is right. My e-register, because I don't think it is. So my registers. Cloud development. Daniel. Yep. He's there, yes. James Harvey was there, but he turned up on the Tuesday instead. Christian. He did Tuesday instead. Sam. You're in Friday, yeah.
Yeah, I'm here.
Jordan, yeah. Nathan, yeah. Yeah.
I'm present, yes.
Joshua. Yep. John, have him on the other channel here. He's busy working on the past paper. Victoria, yep. Did you get that sorted, Victoria?
Get what sorted? Oh yeah. It's sent and all. Thank you very much. Yeah, I thought you meant automate it, and I was like, no, I've not automated it, and now we've not been talking.
Michelle is on a Tuesday, is she not? Is Michelle on a Tuesday or Friday?
She's normally on a Friday, I think, but maybe she went on Tuesday this week.
Yes, we had this conversation earlier, yes. See, old age Tuesday, you can't remember anything you talked about. David Moore is here, isn't he? Yeah. Just talking, weren't we? No. And David Murphy. David Murphy. David Murphy.
Did David Murphy not change to Tuesday?
He did, I think, didn't he? See, he was emailing me earlier, and I think that's what it was about. Yes, he did change to Tuesday, but he's still on the Friday register, and I sent an email to him about that earlier. My memory's just gone. So he was in on Tuesday, he was. Connor Murray. Yes, he's there. Nick is there. Is he? Isn't he? Nick Poole? Did I see him there? Did I? No, maybe not. Was he Tuesday too? Hold on, check my spreadsheet.
He's normally on Friday too. All the Danska ones are Friday, but maybe he swapped.
So he's down on a Tuesday here in my spreadsheet. I think I had him on Tuesday. Maybe he has swapped over right now. Just to confuse me, but it doesn't matter. As long as he's about. He did turn up on Tuesday. Matthew's here. Ronan. Yep.
Yep, I'm here.
That's good. How you getting on, Ronan? You are. You got that task done?
Sorry, I went back on mute. I haven't started it yet. I've been busy with work as well. and then I was
Right.
off there for holiday, so I'm going to start it today.
Okay. I get stuck into it there, will you?
Yeah, definitely will.
If you have any difficulty finding the tutorials, give me a shout, because I would have a list of them somewhere floating about, or I can go through the chat and pick out some of them. All right, but the good starting point is the Power Apps page itself. It has 4 tutorials on it, which give you nearly all you need to do. I can help you a bit as well if you want, but I'll do it on the screen for everybody, so there's no unfair advantage, right? The problem with it is most of you go off and do your own sort of uniqueness to it, and it's hard to get a tutorial that does exactly what you want it to do. So, but if you need to, give me a shout. I'll try and find some information or help you with it myself. Data connection is usually the problem, mainly. Okay, I've waffled on there at 3 o'clock. It's definitely time for a coffee. So I'll stay on the call, but you can go off and work. You can drop off the call if you want, because I've got the e-register done. Okay.
Thank you.
That doesn't mean you get an
Thanks,
early
Geoff.
afternoon now. You have to do your work.
Do you want us to
Cheers,
come
Geoff.
back at any stage?